Important question. Is this a cat or a dog on my jumper? I thought it was a dog. I do not feel comfortable wearing a cat on my jumper. We look disgusting today, but it's okay. This month I've read 3 books for all the online book clubs I'm in, and I'm going to tell you about them. I'm going to go through these in order of how much I liked them, saving the best for last, which means that I'm starting with the banging book club's pick, Vagina. I mentioned in a previous video, which I will link to, that I didn't think I was going to like this one, so I went into it with kind of an unfair bias. But yeah, I was right, I did not like this book. I like the cover, I like the name, I just did not enjoy this book. In the interest of fairness, I actually only read a third of it, and then I got bored. So maybe the last 2/3 were amazing and I'm totally missing out and being unfair, in which case tell me, let me know that this is cheating. But I just could not read anymore, a third of it was enough. Interestingly, the Banging Book Club girls all said they loved it and that it was actually their favourite book that we've read so far, which was weird because usually I so agree with everything they say and I could not have disagreed more with this one, because we've read some great books with the Banging Book Club. This was not one of them. They did have some really interesting things to say about it though, and a lot to say about how it made them feel about their own vaginas, which was great. So you should watch their video, and I will link to their podcast below as well. To me, it felt like so much fake science, and I'm not a scientist at all, but it's like even I could tell that's not good science. She took her own anecdotes and her own experiences as like equally good evidence as scientific research, which is just not. The main problem that I had with this was it was so gender divisive. I liked to an extent what she said about how feminism often continues to work within the guidelines of the patriarchy. For example, when she took issue with the focus we put on women being allowed to have sex like men, women actually need different things from sex and that we should be focusing on them. And I did think that was true to an extent, but she went just too far with those gender divides. It was very much, this is what women need because of their vaginas. And half of what she was saying I didn't relate to anyway. She also left no room for the fact that not all women have vaginas and not everyone with a vagina is a woman. She even straight up said that she wasn't going to talk about women who weren't straight because that would complicate things. And she kept using words like female brain and male brain, which just One of the other guys who's in the Banging Book Club is called Ben Babcock. I'm going to link below to his review because he sums up everything that I didn't like about this book. He described it as a poor mashup of biological determinism and evolutionary psychology, which go away fly. Don't you buzz at me. So overall, I would say there's definitely interesting bits within this, but I just could not stomach the idea of reading the whole book. I would say maybe just listen to the Banging Book Club podcast for the highlights, that might be better. Okay, next up is Fangirl. Now I read this one for the Girl Gang Book Club, which is a Twitter-based book club. I'll put all the details below. So Fangirl is about a girl called Kath going off to uni for the first time, and she is very, very introverted. She doesn't like to leave her room. She doesn't really like to talk to people other than her twin sister, but they're not really getting on at the moment. What she loves to do is write fan fiction on the internet, and she actually has this huge following where she writes gay fan fiction about a book series called Simon Snow, which is very clearly based on Harry Potter. And fanfiction isn't anything I've ever read at all, but I kind of get it, you know? I've definitely had like dirty dreams about my favourite TV characters, so I feel like it's kind of like that. Not that fanfiction is all dirty, I just mean it's like playing with characters that you like in a different way. Now, I've heard so much about Fangirl. People love this book, and I really enjoyed it, but I wouldn't say I fell in love with it in the same way so many people have. I Snapchatted a little bit at the beginning of this book when I was still a little bit annoyed by it, so you can see what I said. So far, I don't like any of the characters in this book. The main girl is just bloody annoying, I don't relate to her at all. Books often set it up as this super cute thing that guys do, refusing to call the main girl by her real name, but it's just fucking rude. Wait, I thought this guy was just being rude, but her name actually is Katha? Katha? Like catheter? Ugh. Her name is Katha and her twin sister is called Ren, so that together they are Katha-Ren. I hate that so much. I did warm up to it a lot after I finished filming that, but I still just could not relate to the main character, Kath, at all. As the book went along, I did start to really warm to her because she lets the reader inside her head a bit more, and you start to see and understand the anxieties that she has about going out, and that made me really empathise with her a lot more. So to be honest, that's probably a really good learning lesson for me. What was a little difficult to understand was the relationship between Kath and her twin sister Ren, because by the time that we meet them, they're already so different and not really talking, but it's such a huge part of their history, the fact they used to be such good friends, and I just found it so hard to imagine. And even when we see flashbacks to them as kids, I didn't really get a sense of this like incredible friendship they had. I got a sense of Kath's dependency on Ren. I never really got to understand a two-way relationship with them. By the time I got into the book, I did really like the characters. I warmed up to Kath a lot. I really liked her roommate Reagan as a character. She felt very real to me. I liked Levi. let's just say her love interest. He was a character that felt quite real and recognisable to me as well. And I did actually laugh when he says, "I'm not really a book person." And she says, "That might be the most idiotic thing you've ever said to me." It kind of reminded me of that Jane Austen line about how people don't like novels, are intolerably stupid, something like that. But the book did really open up to understanding Levi as a person who doesn't like books and finds reading hard. It even has stuff like when he texts her, he uses the wrong grammar and spelling sometimes, which, why should we be allowed to judge people for that? A lot of the time that might mean that they didn't get the chance to have a good education, it might mean they're dyslexic, it might mean so many things, it doesn't mean that they're stupid. My version has a Q&A at the back with Rainbow Rowell, and she said this thing about that: "I never judge or tease people about bad spelling, or things like confusing your and your. I hate to think that people might be afraid to say something beautiful just because they're worried about apostrophes." I thought that was good, and as someone who can be a little bit of a stickler for grammar sometimes, I thought that was a good thing for me to think about. The style of writing in Fangirl is a little bit grating sometimes, but also kind of lovely. One part of the book that really annoys me is when Kath and her sister Ren are in a bar, and these creepy guys are trying to get them to make out because they're twins and in the fantasy, and Levi sticks up to them and tries to get the guys to go away, which is fine, but the way that he said it just really pissed me off, especially because I think it's supposed to be like a feminist book. These two girls have parents, they have a father, and he should never have to worry they're going to end up in a bar debasing themselves for some pervert. That's not something a father should ever have to think about. It's like, really? Is that the best argument that you can come up with? You shouldn't ask them to do this because they have a father who shouldn't have to worry about his girls losing their honour. Ugh, I hated everything about that speech so much. So my conclusions for this one are that I did really enjoy it, and I'll definitely read Rainbow Rowell again. And if you want to join in the Girl Gang Book Club chat, it's on the 28th of June at 8 PM UK time. So sign on to Twitter at that time, look for the hashtag #GGBookClub. And then finally, this one's for Emma Watson's Our Shared Shelf book club, Persepolis. Now this was an incredible book. I've never read a graphic novel before, ever, I don't think, but it's such an incredible way of telling a story. I felt like so emotionally connected the whole way through reading this. This is the complete collection, and it follows Marjan from when she's about 9 or 10 years old, growing up in Iran at the time of the Islamic Revolution. We see her leaving to go to Austria for a few years when she's 14, so her parents send her away, and after 4 years in Europe, we see her come back to Iran and how different she finds it then, and the book finishes when she's around 22. What this portrays brilliantly is how unsettling and confusing it is for this girl. She grows up in a very educated family with much more liberal beliefs, and the contrast for her ever since she's a young girl of what her family believe, what her family tell her versus what her teachers are telling her at school. The contrast in what the government is telling her and how her and her friends act. And at the beginning, when she's 9, you see how hard it is for her to wrap her head around what she actually believes because she's getting so many contradictions. Some parts of this book were devastating. Some parts were really charming and funny, but some parts were very sad. Like when she leaves her family for the first time at the airport, that's really heartbreaking, and that's not even the worst of it. It's never very graphic, but it implies the terrible things that happen to the people who fall out of line of this regime, and it's really hard to read sometimes. She talks about how the government in Iran made death something to celebrate. So she talks about 14-year-old boys from poor families being sent off to die at war with plastic, worthless keys around their neck, which apparently will get them into heaven. So this really twisted way that the government makes people want to celebrate death, as if that will stop them from rebelling against the regime, I guess. And then the section of the book that's in Europe is totally different. She basically tunes out everything that's going on in Iran during that time, and she's suddenly in this totally new culture and having to learn to identify with people who've come from such different backgrounds. I'd say this book has definitely made me want to read more graphic novels. I thought it was absolutely fantastic. It's shown me a great glimpse into another culture that I don't know that much about, and has made me want to learn more about that culture, made me want to read more by this author. I definitely recommend this to anyone, really. Any type of reader I think will get enjoyment from this. So it's been great to read it as part of Emma Watson's book club. So you can join all of those book clubs online. I'll put all the details below. They're all book clubs with a feminist focus, which I really like. It really adds something to the reading experience when you're doing it in conjunction with these other people, even if it is just online. I think that's really fun. So I hope that some of you will maybe be joining the book club next time. Now I'm going to go to work. See you next time.